Tonight, you're not just falling asleep. You're falling back in a time when the sky wasn't just for daydreaming or stargazing, but for warning, for threatening, for whispering omens wrapped in ice and fire. Because tonight, above your tiny wooden roof in the smoggy sprawl of Elizabethan London, something blazes across the heavens. A tail of light, impossibly long and slow, slices through the night like a divine sword being dragged across velvet. It's 1577, and you're about to panic. The comet hangs there, huge, glowing, eerily still. And your first instinct is probably correcting this can't be good, not with how people are reacting. You step outside, barefoot on damp cobbles, to find your neighbours all gawking skyward, mouths open, some muttering prayers. One old woman clutches a rosary with knuckles so tight they've gone white. A boy points and says he saw the devil riding it. Honestly, you half believe him. You've seen strange things in the sky before. Lunar eclipses that make dogs howl, shooting stars that vanish in a blink. But this is something else entirely. This feels personal. Like the cosmos just opened an envelope addressed to whom it may concern, probably you. And you're not alone in thinking that. Across the city, church bells ring without rhythm. Pamphlets are already being printed, rushed out with woodcut illustrations of doom. One particularly dramatic sheet shows skeletons dancing in the flames behind a blazing comet, as if hell itself got a little overexcited with the pyrotechnics. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. I love hearing how far this sleepy little channel travels. Now, dim the lights, strict codes. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You retreat back into your cottage, shutters drawn against a sky that suddenly feels hostile. You duck low by the hearth, even though comets don't usually fire arrows. Probably. Here's the wild part. You're not wrong to be scared, because in 1577, most of your world, rich or poor, noble or knave, believes comets are not just pretty cosmic streaks. No, they are messages. Angry letters from God. They mean something terrible is coming: war, plague, famine, or even the death of a monarch. And given how fragile your daily life already is. Rats in the floor, open sewers, random sword fights in alleyways. The idea that the universe might be gunning for you too. It's kind of the last straw. One popular astrologer named Richard Harvey publishes a full interpretation of the comet within weeks. Codes, he calls it fearsome and fiery, and basically the celestial version of a screaming banshee. He also throws in enough Latin to make it sound smarter than it probably is. But here's where things get stranger. No one can quite agree what the comet means. That doesn't stop anyone, of course. Some say it's a warning to Queen Elizabeth herself. Others claim it's a prophecy of German princes dying, or the Turks attacking Vienna, or even the end of days. Historians still argue whether people actually believed the comet caused these things, or just conveniently appeared when it was time to assign cosmic blame. Either way, you're not sleeping well tonight. At least you're not alone. In Denmark, a man named Tycho Brahe, yes, the guy with the brass nodes, is furiously recording the comet's path. He's got one foot in astrology, one in astronomy, strict codes, and possibly one in some sort of extremely chaotic notebook system. But his observations will later help scientists realize that comets aren't in the Earth's atmosphere, they're way out in space. Which, to be fair, makes them scarier, not less. Meanwhile, back in your own house, you toss another log on the fire. You try to eat your supper, but even the onion stew tastes ominous. A few doors down, someone starts wailing, convinced this is divine retribution for sleeping in on Sunday. You consider praying, but decide that would feel a little insincere coming from someone who last attended church for the free bread. The most unsettling thing, no one knows when the comet will go away. It just lingers, night after night, like an unpaid bill stuck to the stars. You remember what the old herbalist told you when you were a child? That comets are the breath of dragons sleeping beneath the sea. that every time one appears, a dragon rolls over and dreams of fire. You believed it then, and part of you still kind of does. Because when you peer through the cracks in your shutters, that tail of fire seems to ripple like smoke, like something ancient exhaling. And even though you know it's far away, far beyond reach, you wrap your cloak tighter and swear it looked straight at you. You wake the next morning not fully rested, but also not engulfed in flame, which, considering the circumstances, feels like a minor win. The comet is still there, faintly visible even in the dawn light, just hovering like it owns the sky. It hasn't exploded. It hasn't flung plagues like darts from Olympus. But it hasn't gone away either, which is worse, somehow. Like a ticking clock with no alarm set, just suspense. You walk to the market square, trying to ignore the way everyone's pretending not to glance upward every few minutes. One merchant has painted a crude comet sign on his apple carting, "Buy now, before the world ends." You've got to admire the hustle. Even the town criers have given up the usual, "Hear ye," and are now mostly shouting ominous Bible verses. "The stars shall fall from heaven," yells one, just before tripping over a dog. Everyone laughs nervously. The dog looks unimpressed. But here's the thing, the Elizabethans didn't just fear comets because they looked scary. They feared them because they fit a worldview where everything, stars, weather, your toothache, was part of a divine, cosmic pattern. If something went wrong, there had to be a reason. A heavenly memo. Comets weren't just random, nothing was. They were signs. Symptoms of bigger things. And in the 1500s, let's be honest, there were lots of bigger things to worry about. Take Queen Elizabeth I herself. Her court was constantly buzzing with intrigue, assassination plots, secret codes, and enough backstabbing to make a modern reality show seem tame. The Queen needed to maintain control over a country divided by religion, uneasy about gender roles, and always on the verge of civil panic. So when a giant flaming streak crossed the sky, she noticed. One report from 1580, just a few years after the big comet of 1577, suggests that Elizabeth herself consulted astrologers about celestial signs. Not because she necessarily believed every prediction, but because everyone else did. Rulers in this period often used astrology like a political weather forecast, not to decide what to do, but to figure out how much rain of public opinion was coming. And astrologers, by the way, were serious business. Guys like John Dee, the Queen's own advisor, who also dabbled in talking to angels through polished obsidian mirrors, were celebrities in their day. If an astrologer said a comet meant trouble, you lit a candle and hoped your name wasn't scribbled in the divine, naughty column. Still, not everyone saw doom in every flaming tale. Some folks tried to use comet appearances to make sense of the past. They'd say, well, remember how the comet of 1528 appeared just before that nasty outbreak of the Sweeting sickness? Or the comet of 1556 totally lined up with the emperor's abdication. Coincidence? I think not. It became a kind of cosmic post-it note system. Historians still argue whether this was genuine belief or just an Elizabethan version of confirmation bias, cherry-picking disasters to match celestial events. But you, standing here with a loaf of bread under your arm and a weird sense of foreboding in your gut, don't really care about academic debates, strict codes. You just want to know if this comet means something terrible is coming to your doorstep, or if it's already here. And it doesn't help that sermons have suddenly gone all fire and brimstone. Your parish priest, normally a sleepy, mumbling sort, has turned into a doomsday poet. He talks about Sodom, Gomorrah, and the wrath of God with the enthusiasm of a man who's been waiting for an excuse. And the comet? Oh, he says it's no less than the sword of divine fury burning across the firmament. Which, okay, kind of poetic, but also not great for your sleep schedule. Even worse, the stars seem brighter these nights. Not just the comet, but everything. Maybe it's the time of year. Or maybe your eyes are just better adjusted from all the sky watching. But it feels like the heavens are putting on a show just for you. A show with no intermission. One fringe theory making the rounds, and let's be honest, this one's got some flair, is that the comet is the wandering soul of a betrayed king. Specifically, Richard II, who, according to one very dramatic pamphlet, was so furious about his hasty burial and bad PR that he launched himself into the cosmos to return as a comet-shaped ghost. He's apparently back now to express celestial disapproval. Of what? No one's sure. Probably everything. You hear this while sipping weak ale at the tavern, and honestly, it kind of tracks. So you wander home beneath the ever-watching tail of light, and the quiet settles into your bones. It's strange, but after a few days, the fear doesn't go away. It just changes shape. The comet becomes a part of your evening routine. Light a candle, say a prayer, check the sky. Worry vaguely about boiling your drinking water, you should do that anyway. And somewhere in the distance, another pamphlet goes to print. This one claiming the comet signals the rise of witches. Of course it does. Everything does. You lie in bed that night, listening to the soft creak of wooden beams above you. The fire crackles, low and comforting. But still, you glance toward the window, just in case. Still there, still glowing, still staring back. Whatever message it's sending, you hope it's at least legible to someone. Because to you, it's just a question with no answer, a riddle the sky refuses to solve. By the third week, your neck aches from all the sky checking. The comet refuses to leave. It's up there each night, burning calmly, insistently, like a bad omen that missed its exit. And people are starting to adjust to it, which is somehow worse. It's no longer a shock. Now it's a silent roommate. Unwanted, uninvited, absolutely glowing. You pass two washerwomen muttering about a cow giving birth to a two-headed calf the night after the comet first appeared. One insists it spoke Latin. The other says it sneezed fire. It's a bit much. But then again, when the sky catches fire, the imagination follows. Even your local apothecary has gotten comet fever. He's started selling a tonic. Supposedly protects against celestial influence. It's mostly vinegar and mint. Tastes like regret. But hey, he's sold out twice. The whole town is shifting in subtle ways. More prayers. More whispers. More people suddenly paying off debts and apologizing to estranged cousins. You've seen at least 3 backyard sacrifices. Not goats, thankfully, just weird vegetables arranged in circles. Still, the vibe is tense. And the government? Oh, it's not helping. Royal proclamations start showing up. Carefully worded in that way only governments can managing. There is no cause for alarm, but also, maybe stay indoors after dark. Avoid looking directly at the comet, and report any unusual behavior to your local constable. Comforting. The Crown's astrologers are working overtime. And let's be clear, Elizabeth, I didn't just tolerate astrologers, she used them. Especially John Dee, her court magician, star chart whisperer, and part-time necromancer. He believed the heavens were a kind of divine script, if only you had the right decoder ring. He wrote entire books about this. He even had a special table with angelic symbols carved into it for spiritual conversations. Historians still argue whether Dee genuinely believed all of it or was playing the long game of Elizabethan politics. One where a few whispered, angelic secrets could earn you royal favor and a tidy pension. Either way, he and his fellow Sky Watchers tried to reassure people that this comet wasn't necessarily bad. Just important. Transformative. Possibly apocalyptic. But, in a neutral way. Still, no one's buying it. A fringe theory now suggests the comet has magnetic powers that disturb the brain. You hear this from a local herbalist with twigs in her hair and a voice like wind through dry leaves. It makes people think strange thoughts. She says, "You natural ideas." She looks at you like she's seen inside your skull. You buy a pouch of lavender and back away slowly. But there's one thing everyone agrees on: the animals know something. Dogs won't stop howling. Birds migrate in weird directions. Your neighbor's cat has taken to sitting on the roof and staring at the comet like it owes her money. One night, a group of pigs escaped their pen and ran full speed into the woods. No one's seen them since. There's a rumor they joined a coven. That week, the mayor declares a day of prayer and fasting. He stands on a wooden platform in the town square, his robes flapping awkwardly in the wind, and declares, "We must humble ourselves before the heavens!" Then he promptly trips over his own feet and falls into a bucket of onions. The townspeople bow their heads, not out of reverence, just to hide the snickers. But you do pray. Not out of fear exactly, more out of reflex. It's what people do when the rules break down. When the stars start acting out of character. You light a candle and kneel, the wood cold against your knees, and you try not to think about how a flaming sky ribbon could be rearranging your fate with every passing second. There's also the question of time. No clocks, no phones, no global newsfeed. How do you know how long this has been going on? A few days, a month, more. Time here is a soft thing, measured by church bells and the length of shadows. But under the comet, it feels suspended, held in place. Like history itself is taking a deep breath, and while you're adjusting to this celestial house guest, news spreads from other towns. Faint rumors about strange births. Fires starting without cause. One story says a man's shadow started bleeding. Another says a priest turned to stone mid-sermon. Probably untrue. Hopefully. And yet there's something about comets that just invites this kind of thinking. They're so completely other. They don't follow the same rules as the stars. They appear suddenly, change direction, vanish. Even in our world, centuries later, they still carry the ghost of superstition. We name them after discoverers, but deep down, part of us still thinks of them as omens. Back in your Elizabethan night, you dream strange dreams. Flaming swords. Stairways into the clouds. A chorus of faceless monks pointing upward, silently. You wake up sweating, heart racing, unsure whether it's the nightmare or the cider from dinner. And outside, the comet's still there. Quiet. Watching, as if waiting for you to make the next move. Your village isn't alone in its restlessness. The entire kingdom seems to be catching a fever, and the comet, blazing like a divine exclamation mark across the sky, is the fuel on everyone's fire. In London, rumour spreads faster than the plague, which, by the way, is still very much a thing. But strangely, the fear of disease has taken a back seat. You hear of households throwing herbs in the fireplace not for illness, but to dissolve celestial influence. One nobleman is said to have smeared honey on all his windows to confuse the comet's reflection. You try to picture a comet getting flustered by its own sticky double and failing to do whatever it was planning. It helps a little. The local innkeeper has started offering comet-proof lodging, which, shockingly, costs more. When pressed, he insists it's the angle of the ceiling beams. Deflects the bad energy. He says this with a straight face while serving suspiciously lumpy stew. Meanwhile, church attendance doubles. Even the skeptics show up. You sit near the back, watching familiar faces suddenly take communion with trembling hands. The priest talks of Job, of the signs and portents. He says the heavens are a book, and God writes in fire. Someone coughs, someone else weeps. That week, a strange man arrives in your village, cloaked, soft-spoken, with a black satchel full of instruments you don't recognize. He claims to be an Italian natural philosopher. You're not entirely sure what that means, but he smells like cinnamon and mercury, and that's probably not ideal. He sets up a small camp outside town and begins taking notes. At night, you see him using a long, tube-like device aimed at the sky. He mutters to himself, tracing something in the air. Children say he talks to the comet. Adults say nothing, but they avoid his path. He leaves behind small drawings in chalk. Spirals, stars, something that looks disturbingly like a weeping face. Historians still argue whether figures like him were early scientists or traveling frauds. Some even wonder if they were both. Part charlatan, part visionary. Back then, astronomy and astrology shared a bunk bed. People still debated whether the movement of planets caused earthly events or merely mirrored them. Either way, looking up meant meaning something was coming. Your dreams get stranger. One night, you dream of fire raining upward. of birds flying backward, of a queen with stars in her hair, crying onto maps, strict codes. You wake up with a word in your mouth that you don't understand and can't remember. It's as though your brain is doing its best Elizabethan impression of a cosmic breakdown. Even animals seem less normal. A rooster crows at midnight, frogs appear in dry fields. A herd of sheep breaks formation to arrange themselves into a spiral, briefly, before returning to their usual scattered chaos. People murmur about a celestial shepherd calling his flock. You try not to be one of the sheep, one of the quirkier developments. Comet-inspired fashion. Some wealthy townsfolk begin wearing sky-themed accessories. Dark blue cloaks speckled with silver, starburst pins, even little trails of fabric sewn behind collars to imitate a comet's tail. Comet core. You think to yourself, it won't last, but it is dramatic. You spot a merchant wearing a ruffled collar so wide it could catch rainwater for a village. He calls it Hobbit-inspired. Still, nothing matches the sheer emotional weight people place on the comet. For some, it becomes a personal sign of hope, of doom, of change. One widow swears it appeared on the anniversary of her husband's death. She now stares at it nightly, convinced he's saying hello. Another man insists it glows brighter whenever he feels guilty, which, let's face it, might be more about his choices than the cosmos. By the fourth week, public readings begin, not scripture, but prophecies. Old volumes are dusted off. Nostradamus is quoted with breathless authority. One pamphlet claims a blazing serpent in the sky foretells the fall of kings. Another says a sword of fire means the ocean will turn to blood. They're poetic, they're unsettling, and they sell very well. It doesn't help that England is already teetering. Queen Elizabeth is strong, sure, but aging. Catholic plots bubble under the surface. Spain looms with its navy and its burning ambitions. The Comet just puts a flaming cherry on top of that political sundae. And speaking of Elizabeth, she finally issues a statement. Not in the way we'd expect today, no press conference or moody Instagram post. Instead, through courtly declarations and carefully managed appearances. She attends a prayer service. She wears black with stars embroidered into the hem. Strict, she lets John Dee speak on her behalf in vague and mystical terms. He says the comet heralds cleansing, and that England stands at the edge of something immense. Comforting if you enjoy metaphysical riddles at bedtime. Historians still argue whether the Queen truly believed in celestial omens or simply used them as tools of statecraft. What's clear is these, in a world where most people couldn't read and only a few had ever seen a map, the sky was the newspaper. And the comet. It was the front page headline every night. Back in your little house, you stare at the ceiling and wonder what tomorrow brings. Will the comet vanish as suddenly as it arrived? Will something happen first? War, flood, a new star born in its wake. Your thoughts twist into ribbon shapes, folding and looping like dreams already forming. And then you fall asleep. Not peacefully exactly, but with a sense of belonging to a moment in time when the sky felt alive and everyone, everywhere, looked up together. Morning brings an airy hush. The birds are quieter than usual, or maybe your ears are still full of comet dreams. You rub your eyes, half expecting the sky to be on fire. But no, it's just an ordinary, grey Elizabethan morning, damp and moody like it always is. Except, of course, for that flaming space rock tail still streaking the heavens like someone forgot to blow out the candle of the cosmos. Everyone's pretending to be normal, which somehow makes things worse. Bakers bake, tailors stitch. But beneath each everyday action is the weight of the question no one dares voice out louding. What happens next? You pass a group of children reenacting the comet's arrival. One kid climbs onto a barrel, flailing a stick like a blazing tail while shouting, "I am the end of days!" A girl giggles and pretends to faint. Their parents don't laugh. One mutters something about blasphemy, which, this being the 1500s, could mean anything from "don't mock God" signs to "I'm just generally nervous and blaming the children." At the market, prices have risen again. It's the comet. Vendors say as if a celestial body millions of miles away has caused the cost of cabbage to triple. One fishmonger claims her catch now glows faintly at night. Another insists his barrels of pickled herring have started fermenting in reverse. He offers no explanation but does wink with unsettling confidence. You grab a loaf of bread that tastes like anxiety and too much salt. The baker says it's a new recipe for protection. Salt purifies, he explains, handing you a bun dense enough to serve as a self-defense weapon. That night, the sky turns even stranger. Not just the comet, which seems to pulse now. Maybe just a trick of the eyes, or maybe a nervous twitch in your soul. But the stars too, they shimmer in odd formations. A farmer insists he sees a dragon in the sky. His wife says it's clearly a plow. Their neighbor, naturally, claims it's a message from his dead mother. You nod politely an inch away. This is the moment when the pamphlets really start to pour in. And buy pamphlets. Think early modern clickbait. Printed on cheap paper, these one-sheet wonders fly off the presses of London and end up in every village, stuffed into coat pockets or pinned to tavern walls. The titles alone are anxiety-inducing works of art, heaven's judgment on a sinful nation, a star that bleeds fire, and why it hates you, the blazing rod of God's fury. You'd roll your eyes, but you also read them all, twice, under your blanket, by candlelight. One pamphlet includes an illustration of a comet dangling like a chandelier above England, each tendril pointing to a different doom: plague, war, famine, French people. Another shows Queen Elizabeth staring heroically into the flaming sky, with a lion at her side and lightning striking the Pope. Subtle. And here's the weird part. Some of these pamphlets aren't just scaremongering. Mixed among the hysteria are early attempts at actual observation. Crude diagrams show the comet's position over time. Some authors try to calculate its speed using church steeples and rough measurements. They use phrases like arc of movement and divine parabola. Historians still argue whether these pamphleteers were proto-scientists or just clever fear peddlers trying to move paper before the next plague wave. You feel caught in the middle, torn between fear and fascination. Part of you wants to hide in the cellar with a jug of ale and a bucket of salted eels. The other part wants to climb a hill and get a closer look, notebook in hand, just like that Italian philosopher still muttering outside town. You do neither. You just watch and listen. Because the ski isn't the only place acting strange. Dreams start infecting the village. At first, it's small things. A merchant wakes up swearing he saw the queen dressed in rags, sweeping dust from the moon. A weaver dreams of hands unweaving his tapestries as if time itself had grown bored. The priest confesses, only to you, oddly, that he dreamed of fish falling from the sky and speaking Latin. Soon, people start keeping dream journals. Folk gather in taverns not just to drink, but to exchange nighttime visions like trading cards. Yours had bees. Mine had blood rain. Did your comet speak? No, but it blinked. Even more unsettling, a few dreams begin repeating. Across different people, several villagers, who don't usually speak to each other, describe walking down the same staircase into a circular room, with a comet etched into the stone ceiling. One boy draws it on the wall. An old woman faints when she sees it. She says she saw the same mark years ago, during the last great comet of her youth. No one believes her, but everyone secretly wants to. Now, if you're looking for a touch of levity, and let's face it, you need it, consider the comet-themed food. Some entrepreneurial types begin marketing comet pies, filled with whatever's left in the larder, but shaped like a tail-streaked star. One cart sells flaming buns, literally ignited at the moment of purchase, so you can taste the heavens. A man in a cloak offers roasted chets, blessed by the comet's aura, which seems to be code for they've been sitting under the sky for an hour. It's madness. But it's a shared madness. You begin to wonder if that's what matters. Not whether the comet means doom or luck or weather, but that everyone is experiencing it together. Across class, across counties, even across beliefs. The sky has bound you all in curiosity and dread. like a campfire no one can stop staring into, and still the comet burns. The days stretch out beneath the comet's lingering glow, and time begins to feel a little sideways. You wake up unsure if it's morning or just a lighter shade of night. The sun, when it bothers to show up, looks like it's sulking behind a gazy veil. People say the sky's gotten paler, or angrier, or both. Strict codes. It's like even the weather's not sure what kind of mood it's supposed to be in. And while life staggers on in some form of normalcy, whispers begin to turn into rumours, then rumours into sermons, and sermons into royal proclamations. Word spreads that Queen Elizabeth herself has taken notice. Which, strict codes, given she's the head of the Church of England and basically the nation's collective mom, is kind of a big deal. The Queen doesn't just glance up at passing clouds. If she's paying attention to the comet, that means it's real, important, regal, dangerous. Supposedly, her astrologers are losing sleep, poring over charts, comparing star maps, muttering about alignments and portents. A courier in town claims the Queen ordered all noble households to perform acts of contrition, which sounds like a fancy way of saying everyone panic politely. Some nobles start fasting. Others donate extravagantly to churches. A few just build new wings on their manors, as if you can remodel your way out of cosmic judgment. One particularly dramatic duke has a chapel painted entirely black. He claims the colour will shield him from heaven's fire. It mostly just creeps out the servants. Meanwhile, strict codes. The church, never one to miss a cosmic cue, begins issuing its own interpretations. Fire and brimstone preachers stomp through villages like amateur astronomers with holy scripts, bellowing that the comet heralds punishment for vanity, greed, or the classic scapegoat theatre. Always the theatre. Repent, one man yells in the square, or the stars will sing your funeral. You're not entirely sure stars can sing, but his conviction is impressive, and his beard seems to have been singed recently, which makes you wonder if he's been doing some up-close comet research, or just a failed cooking experiment. Still, even among all this spectacle, there are thinkers trying to keep their heads. A few scholars dare suggest the comet not be divine at all, but natural. Celestial bodies with elliptical orbits, reflecting sunlight, predictable even. One man from Cambridge has written a whole treatise on it, which unfortunately also includes 20 pages comparing comet tails to the devil's whiskers. So, baby steps. Historians still argue whether Elizabeth herself leaned more toward divine meaning or scientific curiosity. Her personal letters suggest a blend. She once called a comet fiery warning, and a glorious curiosity in the same paragraph, royal multitasking at its finest. You, meanwhile, walk the fine line between fear and wonder. One night, you're sitting by a pond. The surface ripples with silver moonlight and the faint blaze of the comet's reflection. You catch yourself whispering to it, asking it things. You don't even know what really. Maybe it's just comforting to pretend the sky is listening. Nearby, an old man tosses breadcrumbs into the water, strict codes, muttering that if the fish rise during a comet, it means safe harvests. He gets exactly one bite in 20 minutes and decides the harvest will be moderately grim. You nod solemnly. Moderately grim is the best news you've had all week. There's a subtle shift happening beneath the panic people are connecting. Not just through fear, but curiosity. They start gathering to stargaze, half in dread, half in awe. You share stories, compare dreams, speculate on omens. Strict codes. You argue about whether the tail has grown longer. Someone claims it's curling like a cat's. Strict codes, which sparks a surprisingly intense debate about celestial feline behavior. A fringe healer sets up a tent on the edge of town, offering comet blessings for a modest fee. She waves a smoky branch over your head and tells you your aura is aggressively yellow. You don't know what that means, but she gives you a pebble to sleep with and says you'll dream of necessary truths. You do. You dream you're dancing in the Queen's ballroom with a goose. The goose says taxes are going up. It feels accurate. In the distance, the comet hangs lower on the horizon. It's not actually descending, of course. That's just the rotation of the Earth and the natural path of its arc. But it feels like it's creeping closer, like it knows you're watching. This proximity sparks the next wave of responsive preparation, not just spiritual, but physical. Some towns start storing food. Others close their gates to outsiders. You hear of one village that's built a wooden tower with a giant bell on top, not to signal fires, but to ward off heaven's wrath by ringing it at sunset. Strict, sir, there's no evidence that comets dislike bells, but hey, people are trying. Local blacksmiths begin making comet charms, small iron discs stamped with a star and a cross. They're supposed to protect against cosmic radiation, or curses, or both. Again, the science is shaky, but demand is high. The most bizarre thing you see, a troupe of actors performing a full-length play about the comet. It's part tragedy, part comedy, and features a character named Sir Flamingtail, who falls in love with the moon. Critics, meaning two slightly drunk men, bold, confusing, and possibly treason. But the crowd laughs, cries, and throws coins. Art, after all, is how people process fear. And all the while, you walk through it, breathing in the damp Elizabethan air, laced with soot and rosemary. Watching shadows dance on thatched walls. Hearing whispers of prophecy over your shoulder like the winds trying to share a secret. You keep expecting the comet to vanish, for the sky to reset, but it stays. A light that refuses to leave. A reminder etched in fire. The comet lingers like an uninvited guest who's overstayed their welcome, casting an eerie glow over your daily life. You trudge through muddy streets. The tail's faint light mixing with the flicker of torches and the occasional stray lantern. Shadows stretch long and strange, twisting familiar shapes into something slightly unsettling, like your own world is playing a slow trick on you. Meanwhile, strict codes. The Queen's Court is abuzz with more than just whispers. Rumours fly that Elizabeth has summoned her top advisors and astrologers for secret meetings deep inside the palace walls. They speak of omens and portents, of celestial signs that could tip the balance of kingdoms. It's said that even Sir Walter Raleigh, known more for his charm and expeditions than superstition, has been seen studying the night sky with an intensity that borders on obsession. One thing is certain: the comet has turned the Elizabethan imagination upside down. People across the land are scrambling to make sense of the fiery spectacle overhead. Merchants are hawking charms and amulets, strict codes, claiming they'll shield you from the comet's supposed curse. One vendor tries selling comet-infused ale, which tastes suspiciously like regular ale but comes with a stern warning to drink wisely or be struck down. You overhear a conversation in a tavern where a man swears the comet has given him prophetic dreams, visions of battles and betrayals yet to come. Another dismisses it as nonsense and claims the real danger is the plague, quietly spreading through the allies and markets. Historians still argue whether the comet's appearance actually diverted attention from these more earthly threats, or if it heightened public anxiety to an unbearable degree. In quieter moments, you find yourself gazing upward, mesmerized by the comet's slow arc across the sky. There's a strange beauty in its glow, a reminder of the vastness beyond your small world. It's humbling, almost peaceful, despite the fear and superstition swirling below. And yet, beneath that calm, a tension builds. People start preparing, not just spiritually but physically. Farms are stocked, weapons sharpened, and prayers whispered for protection. The comet becomes a symbol of uncertainty, a cosmic question mark hanging over the age. You can't help but wondering, is this fiery traveler a warning, a marvel, or simply a magnificent accident of the universe? The answer seems as elusive as the stars themselves. The comet's fiery tail begins to fade slowly, like a candle guttering in a breeze you can't quite feel. You notice how the nights grow darker again, but the unease lingers. It's as if the sky's way of reminding you, even when the show ends, the questions don't. People murmur that the heavens have spoken, but no one agrees on exactly what was said. At court, the Queen's astrologers present their final reports. One claims the comet foretells a great upheaval, wars, betrayals, the end of dynasties. Another insists it signals renewal, a chance for England to rise stronger from its trials. Elizabeth listens, face unreadable, before turning the matter over to her trusted counsel. Historians still argue whether she saw the comet as a divine warning or a celestial curiosity to be studied. Outside the palace walls, the people are left to interpret the comet's meaning themselves. Street preachers grow bolder, declaring it a call to repentance. At the same time, a growing number of scholars and skeptics begin to question these fiery claims. They urge caution and reason. Reminders that comets have appeared before, long before any plague or war. You wander through the marketplace, sensing the shift. The charm sellers pack up their stalls, and the fervor calms into a cautious watchfulness. But beneath this calm, a deeper fear simmers, one not of stars or fire, but of what human hearts might do when faced with uncertainty. In the quiet corners of taverns, old tales of comets return, mingling with new worries. Some say the comet was a harbinger of the plague. Others whisper it marked the passing of an era. One eccentric historian even claims the comet's appearance in Shakespeare's King Lear, weaving celestial fear into art that would echo for centuries. You find yourself caught between these worlds, between superstition and science, fear and fascination. The comet, though fading, remains a ghostly presence, a reminder that sometimes the sky tells stories no one can fully understand. The comet is now just a faint memory in the night sky, but its impact lingers like a shadow at dusk. You move through the streets of London, the hum of everyday life mixing uneasily with whispered fears. Children play under the watchful eyes of their parents, who glance up nervously whenever a shadow passes, recalling the recent celestial spectacle. You might think a comet is just a rare light show, but for the Elizabethans, it was a signal as loud and clear as any town crier's bell. As you pass the market stalls, you overhear debates about whether the comet brought misfortune or was merely a cosmic coincidence. Some merchants swear their fortunes, took a dive afterward, blaming the stars rather than their own poor choices. Others laugh it off, insisting the comet couldn't possibly affect something as earthy as commerce. This tug-of-war between fate and free will is an old dance, and the comet has thrown the steps into chaos. Meanwhile, the learned men of the day, astronomers and astrologers alike, scramble to document the event. They sketch charts, measure angles, and debate its path. The line between astronomy and astrology remains blurry. You catch snippets of a heated argument. Strict, did this comet portend doom or merely pass through? Indifferent to human affairs. Historians still argue whether Elizabethan astronomers saw comets more as scientific curiosities or ominous signs. In the cozy, dimly lit chambers of the Royal Society's forerunners, some scholars quietly push for observation grounded in evidence rather than fear. They remind their peers that comets are natural phenomena, and perhaps, with time, humanity might learn to read the skies without trembling. Yet, outside these circles, superstition holds firm, especially among those who have lost loved ones to plague or war. For them, the comet is a fiery messenger of fate, not a scientific puzzle. You stroll past a humble bookshop, where a pamphlet titled "The Great Comet and the Wrath of God" is being sold to eager readers hungry for explanation. Meanwhile, in another corner, a small group gathers to hear a playwright read aloud verses inspired by the comet's ghostly trail, a reminder that sometimes fear and wonder fuel the arts more than facts. So here you are, caught between sky and earth, faith and reason, history and myth. The comet's tale has woven itself into the very fabric of Elizabethan life. Its glow fading, but its stories only growing brighter. The comet's story doesn't end in the skies. It spills into the heart of Elizabethan superstition and daily ritual. You find yourself in a bustling apothecary's shop, the air thick with the scent of herbs, dried flowers, and something faintly metallic. Here, remedies are concocted not just from science, but from centuries of fear and folklore. If the comet was a sign of doom, the apothecary's shelves hold the antidotes. Locals clutch charms, amulets, and strange potions believed to ward off the comet's curse, or more accurately, the disasters it supposedly heralds, like plagues, famines, and wars. You might raise an eyebrow at these cures, but for many, they're a lifeline. One curious Elizabethan remedy calls for powdered unicorn horn, an expensive ingredient rumored to neutralize poison. Of course, unicorns are mythical, but the trade in such items thrived nonetheless. Historians still argue whether these magical ingredients were symbolic or actually used in treatments. Walking further, you notice families preparing their homes against evil influences. Windows are shut tight at night to keep out the evil airs that comets were thought to stir. There's a strange mix of practical wisdom, cleaning, fortifying doors, and ritualistic acts like burning incense or scattering salt. You think about how, even today, people light candles or keep talismans close when feeling uncertain. Fear and hope often travel hand in hand. In town squares, public announcements remind citizens to pray and seek forgiveness, as the comet's appearance is often linked to divine anger. The church bells toll more frequently, you calling parishioners to Mass. You overhear sermons preaching that repentance might avert the worst fates foretold by the fiery visitor. And yet, some skeptical voices whisper that such fearmongering benefits the powerful who control both faith and governance. Interestingly, despite all this, the comet also inspired a sense of awe and wonder. Poets penned verses marveling at the streak of light, comparing it to a celestial brushstroke on the canvas of night. Artists attempted to capture its eerie glow, sometimes exaggerating its size and tail for dramatic effect. You chuckle quietly, imagining Elizabethans mistaking a bit of atmospheric fog for a comet's smoke, kind of like mistaking your neighbor's terrible cooking for a new exotic cuisine. Strict codes. So, as you leave the apothecary's comforting chaos behind, you realize the comet was as much a social phenomenon as an astronomical one, blurring the lines between science, superstition, and art in a world eager to find meaning in the skies. You step out of the apothecary and into the chill of an Elizabethan evening, the comet still blazing overhead like a fiery sword hanging in the dark. People's reactions vary wildly, from whispered prayers to loud curses aimed at the heavens. You wander through the market, where rumors swirl thicker than the smoke from the hearth fires. Some say the comet signals the death of a monarch, others that it's a harbinger of plague. You overhear a butcher grumble about his luck, blaming the comet for the bad meat that's been selling lately. In truth, comets often sparked paranoia so intense that even everyday misfortunes were blamed on their presence. It's here that you witness the intersection of astronomy and astrology. Distinction not as clear in the 16th century as it is today. Strict codes. You find a group gathered around an astrologer who, under a flickering candle, draws charts and interprets the comet's trajectory. He warns that it's not just a physical event, but a cosmic message encoded in the stars. The astrologer's words carry weight, mingling celestial mechanics with spiritual portent. Historians still argue whether astrology was taken more seriously than astronomy by Elizabethans, or if the two were inseparable in the popular imagination. Curiously, despite all the fear, there's a curious sense of excitement. Comets were rare, after all, and seeing one was like glimpsing a secret message from the gods or the universe itself. You imagine how it might have felt to stare upward, your breath fogging in the night air, while others around you debate its meaning. The comet becomes a catalyst for storytelling, strict codes, a spark for local legends that would be passed down through generations, blurring the line between fact and myth. You recall that even Shakespeare made allusions to comets in his plays, weaving them into tales of fate and disaster. This was no coincidence. Elizabethan art and literature often mirrored the fears and hopes stirred by celestial events. Some scholars suggest these references helped audience process their anxieties about political instability and disease, transforming cosmic chaos into familiar narratives. As you continue walking, you notice how the comet's glow affects the mood of the town. Faces are illuminated by flickering torchlight, eyes reflecting a mix of dread and curiosity. It's a moment frozen in time where science, superstition, and human nature collide under one fiery sky. You find yourself at the edge of the town where the river bends beneath a moonlit sky, and the comet still burns bright above. The water's surface catches its flicker, doubling the eerie glow. Around you, nature feels charged with meaning. Birds fall silent, and even the wind seems to hush in reverence or fear. You remember that Elizabethans believed comets could disturb not only human affairs, but also the natural world, triggering storms, crop failures, and animal unrest. Strict codes. It's no wonder then that farmers watch the skies with a nervous eye, worrying about the fate of their harvest. You approach a small farmhouse where an elderly woman is stirring herbs over a smoky fire. She is one of the town's wise women, skilled in both healing and folk magic, the kinds of practices that dance on the edge of accepted religion. Her weathered hands crush leaves while she mutters prayers meant to protect the household from whatever cosmic mischief the comet might bring. You can almost smell the bitter tang of rue and wormwood mingling with the smoke. Interestingly, some historians believe that such witches were vital to rural healthcare, even as the elite vilified them. The woman shares an old superstitioning. If you see a comet and fail to spit 3 times before sunrise, you risk bad luck for the coming year. You try it yourself, 3 deliberate spits into the cold night air, and almost expect it to work like a charm. These rituals, though quirky to modern ears, gave people a sense of control when faced with cosmic chaos. Historians still debate how widespread such folk beliefs really were and whether they varied between towns or social classes. Nearby, children play quietly. Their games suddenly paused as a dog barks at the comet's strange light. You watch a boy sketch the comet's tail in the dirt, mixing imagination with observation. In this era, the boundary between science and myth was porous, and everyone, from scholars to peasants, contributed to the evolving story of what a comet meant. You think about how this shared experience would bond the community, even if it was born from fear. As dawn approaches, you feel a gentle wariness settle in. The comet continues its journey across the sky, relentless and indifferent to human worries. You imagine how, centuries later, astronomers would unravel its true nature. An icy visitor from the far reaches of the solar system, harmless but spectacular. Yet for now, under Elizabethan stars, it remains a powerful symbol, a cosmic riddle wrapped in fire and shadow. The morning light spills slowly across the cobblestones, softening the sharp edges of the world, and you trudge back toward the town square. The comet's tail has faded to a faint whisper in the sky, but the stories it sparked are still alive. Etched in the faces of merchants, priests, and townsfolk gathered near the church steps. You overhear a heated debate about the comet's meaning. Some say it's a divine warning, others claim it's a natural event, nothing more. The tension between science and superstition is thick enough to slice with a knife. You stop by the marketplace where merchants pack up their stalls. Strict codes. One trader recounts how prices for grain skyrocketed after the comet's appearance, driven by fear of famine. Strict codes. Economic panic was a real consequence of these celestial events. You notice a carved wooden comet hanging from a child's neck, a tiny talisman meant to ward off evil. Such objects were popular, strict codes, even if their effective means a matter historians still argue about. As you walk, you remember how Queen Elizabeth I herself reportedly saw a comet in 1577 and was deeply troubled, interpreting it as an ominous sign. Strict codes. Royal astrologers and courtiers scrambled to read the heavens for clues about the monarch's fate. Some whispered that Elizabeth's fear gave rise to new laws regulating astrology, balancing superstition with political control. The line between cosmic omen and statecraft blurred, revealing the powerful role of belief in governance. In a quiet alley, you glimpse a scholar bent over thick manuscripts, copying notes by candlelight. This scholar represents the growing trend toward empirical observation, a shift toward understanding celestial bodies through math and optics rather than prophecy. Yet, even he cannot fully escape the cultural shadows cast by comets. Historians still debate how much these early scientists influenced public opinion versus being influenced themselves. You feel the weight of all these intersecting worlds. The fearful, the curious, the pragmatic. In Elizabethan England, a comet was more than a streak of light. It was a mirror reflecting every hope and dread of a society caught between old beliefs and new discoveries. As you continue your walk, the air thick with morning mist, you realize that the comet's story is woven into the very fabric of the time, whispering its secrets to anyone willing to listen. The sun climbs higher, melting the morning mist into a soft haze, and you find yourself near the Tower of London, a place steeped in its own shadows and secrets. You hear whispers from guards about a comet seen just before the execution of Mary, Queen of Scots. A celestial sign interpreted by some as a grim prophecy. Strict codes. The intertwining of royal drama and cosmic phenomena was no coincidence to the people of the day. Strict codes. A comet wasn't just sky spectacle but a potent symbol entwined with fate and justice. Strict codes. You pause to watch a group of actors rehearsing a new play that features a comet as a harbinger of doom. The theatre was a vital space for public reflection on these fears and hopes. Elizabethan playwrights often incorporated celestial events into their works, blending reality with drama to capture the public imagination. It's fascinating how entertainment became a mirror to the collective anxieties stirred by those fleeting fairy tales in the sky. Among the crowd, you spot a street astrologer selling comet charms and quick horoscopes. His presence is a reminder of the more commercial and theatrical side of comet lore. Stricts, capitalizing on the public's fear and fascination. Some historians still argue whether such figures merely exploited superstition or actually shaped popular attitudes toward these celestial events. Either way, their role is undeniable in how society digested cosmic phenomena. You reflect on how the printing press had changed the game. Pamphlets and broadsheets about recent cometings spread rapidly, sometimes sensationalized, fueling both fear and curiosity. This new media transformed the way information about comets circulated, making it harder to separate fact from fear. It's a pattern eerily familiar even today. As dusk begins to settle again, you stand looking up at the twilight sky, now calm and comet-free. The celestial visitor has moved on, but the echoes of its passage linger. In tales told, fears fed, and knowledge challenged. You feel a deep connection to this moment, standing on the threshold of an age wrestling between darkness and light, superstition and science, fear and wonder. Night deepens, and the stars stretch across the sky like a vast, glittering tapestry. You settle on a quiet rooftop, the cool air wrapping around you, and you can almost feel the pulse of Elizabethan London beneath your feet. The mixture of hope, fear, and relentless curiosity that made this era so alive. Tonight, comets are no longer just fiery messengers of doom, but symbols of mystery and awe, reminders that the universe is far vaster and stranger than the world you know. Strict codes. As you breathe in the night, you consider how far humanity has come since those fearful glances skyward. The telescope, strict codes, still a fresh invention by your time's standards, is beginning to lift the veil on those sparkling visitors, revealing their true nature as celestial wanderers and not divine wrath. But even with new knowledge, the emotional power of a comet, its beauty and its unpredictability, holds fast to the human imagination. Remember how the Elizabethans' fear of plagues seemed to eclipse their fear of comets, only to have comets flare up as ominous reminders of mortality. Strict codes. It's a dance between what we understand and what we cannot control, and it plays out in every age. Historians still argue whether the widespread dread was mostly superstition or a complex social response to genuine threats. But what remains certain is that these cosmic events were deeply woven into the fabric of Elizabethan life. You let your thoughts drift like the stars, slow and gentle now, as the night carries you closer to sleep. The echoes of ancient fears soften into quiet wonder, and the sky, still vast and endless, invites you to dream beyond the boundaries of time and space. The night stretches on, soft and still, wrapping you in a gentle embrace. The fierce worries of the past, the plagues and comets and whispered fears begin to fade like stars blinking out as dawn nears. You feel a calm settling deep inside, a quiet understanding that no matter how much shadows stretch or flicker, the light always returns. As you rest here, remember that those who looked up centuries ago did so with the same wonder you hold now. Their stories, full of awe and dread, connect us across time like a thread woven through the sky. And though the comets have long vanished, their memory glows softly in the night, a reminder of our shared curiosity and courage to face the unknown. So breathe deeply, let the gentle night wrap you closer, and allow your mind to drift freely beyond the stars. The universe is vast, mysterious, and beautiful, always waiting to be discovered, in stories whispered and dreams dreamed. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let your eyelids close slowly as we drift gently into dreams together.